Good evening, Galaxy fans. Good evening, faithful Galaxy fans. My name is Mike Gray. I'll cover both the Galaxy and LAFC for the Striker. Here with me on this Monday night is my co-host. He is the LA Galaxy beat writer for the Striker. Say hello to Alex Ruiz. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Mike. How are you doing, man?
I just chugged a Celsius, so you know how I'm doing. A little wired, a little tired, but feeling good, all things considered. Why don't we just jump right into it? We were just talking about this. Woke up this morning, and right before we had our little meeting, weekly meeting, we discovered that Wrexham from the reality TV series Welcome to
Well, it's a real
Wrexham.
team. It's a real team.
Oh,
Let's get
well.
that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you said reality TV, like, oh, they're not real, but it is a real team.
Yep. Welsh non-league side. They will be playing the Galaxy. Funny enough, they're playing Los Dos, the Galaxy's reserve squad. And I guess you know there was a bit of chatter online. For me, I actually think it's brilliant because I mean, if the first team played them, it would just be a lose-lose situation. Because I mean, or catch-22 more like. Because I mean, if you win, then you're supposed to win. If you lose, and oh my God, MLS, typical, storylines about the league and so on and so forth. So that part of it I like. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. They're gonna play the second team at the main stadium from the press release. Usually they're playing at the track and field stadium, and they're selling tickets to this game. So I think there'll be a lot of people who are here from Hollywood, who want to watch Wrexham. Although it'll be a preseason game for them. I mean, it's still interesting. I mean, maybe you get Ryan Reynolds to appear in the stadium. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to bump into him if that's the case. But nonetheless, I mean, I think it's really cool. Obviously they just got promoted to I think the fourth tier of English football, so they're a team that has ambition to want to get relegated. I mean, want to get promoted. Excuse me. Well, I think I need a Celsius. They need to get promoted in consecutive years, and it'll be a tough task to do. But I mean, when you got some well-known owners who are willing to spend money on the team, I think that's a possibility. So I'm excited to see what happens. Excited to see what LA Galaxy 2 can do outside of MLS Next Pro. So I think it'll be lots of fun.
Yeah, it's gonna. I mean, fun is the word, isn't it? Because I mean, the one thing that bugged me a little bit when you saw the promotion and everything, Galaxy Land isn't very fun right now, and unfortunately, it's getting to the point where it's permeating like every inch of this club, including social media. Because, I mean, one of my big things that bums me out is whenever the Galaxy promotes something, you know that the comment section is just going to be negative. It's going to be negative, 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 and that there needs to be more fun with this club. And for me, this is fun, and I want to, like you said, I want to see what Galaxy Two can do. So we'll see what happens. But before we get into it, it's interesting. We're on episode 13 and the Galaxy lost. Imagine that. But man, we're 13 episodes in. We hit the a thousand watch mark a long time ago. We're hitting all our benchmarks. You guys care. You guys are watching. And so if you're in the chat or if you hear this later, I just have to give you a nice little round of applause. Honestly, I mean, you guys are great, and me and Alex both appreciate it. So let's get right to it. Orlando, the Galaxy, were going up against a team that had lost three straight at home. This was going to be a real opportunity for Greg Vanny's side to maybe steal a point or maybe even three, despite not having Riqui Puig in the lineup. Vanny in the press conference midweek, he talked specifically about next man up. So me and Alex, we both had the same idea, which is that Memo Rodriguez would start from a central position. But that's not what happened at all, is it, Alex?
Not at all. And I was really surprised to see this. The fact that he went with two central midfielders instead of the normal three that we're accustomed to. I think last season we saw it in many different spurts where Vanny wanted to play 4-4-2 or some variation with, just two central midfielders. And the Galaxy lost all control of the midfield. And you can, in that sample size alone, you saw this team needs to play with three midfielders. Whether that's Riqui Puig. I mean, I think last year they even played with Raveloson before Puig arrived on the team, right? So this wasn't going to work out with just these two midfielders. I knew from the start LA was not going to be as dominant on the ball. And also, I think defensively, they were going to give up a lot of possession in their own half. And they were going to allow space for Orlando to operate in. And then essentially, that's what happened. When I wrote my keys to the game, which you should read because that is very insightful and it will give you a know on what to watch out for. Um, I really thought that Vanny was going to go with Memo Rodriguez, or if he threw a wild card out there like Efrain Alvarez, right? I think we've seen him play centrally. We haven't seen that happen this year. So I thought, hey, if he doesn't fancy Memo, there's Efrain Alvarez. Has he been great? No, but I mean, he's someone different and you're playing him somewhere else. So maybe that could produce something, and he needs that as well. Douglas Costa came in place for Riqui Puig essentially, and did nothing for 45 minutes, to be honest. Looking over through the film of the last game, his work rate is just not there in the attack wise, whether that's in possession, out of possession. I'll have a column coming out later this week on the striker, kind of breaking down why he's not really working with the Galaxy and maybe some ways he can kind of salvage his LA Galaxy career, because let's be honest, he's done nothing at this point. I mean, he's been known to get red cards and he is for his playmaking or goal scoring ability, and the only positive I can say is that at least he's somebody that can take free kicks. So definitely disappointing performance from the whole team. But I thought Douglas Costa, in a situation where this is his first start of the year, should have done a lot better, and unfortunately he didn't.
Yeah, that first half was a disaster zone. First 10 minutes, he had two terrible turnovers. He had a wayward free kick. We're going to talk about this later, but there was a moment on social media where, Costa, he's just jogging. I don't even want to call it a jog. It's less than a jog. It's like a walk jog. And then, Javi goes on a 50-yard sprint up the field just to try and bring something to the attack. And you cannot. You're going to get subbed out at the college level playing that way. And, I was kind of thinking about it. It's not that MLS hasn't had petulant players before. I mean, like Zlatan, for Christ's sakes, right? But, Thierry Henry, there are players who show up and, they have an attitude. But the difference is that the two latter ones, they brought it on the field. They were able to talk the talk and walk the walk. Costa's just kind of a parody of like a superstar player at this point, and I'm not surprised he got subbed out. What I am surprised about, like you mentioned, is that he was on the field in the first place. I don't understand how. Yeah, no, we'll skip to that later because I do think that Vanny deserves criticism for starting Costa when it was pretty predictable that wouldn't work. But maybe it was just trying to give him a shot or something. But yeah, it wasn't great. Speaking of Annie, usually we do our podcast the day after matches. It's something we like to do. I was feeling under the weather. I kind of needed a day to rest, so I told Alex to chill, give him a nice day off. But you know what else? Another reason why we kind of did that is because emotions were running really high after the loss. A lot of Vanny out chat for maybe the first time on social media. I'm just gonna tell you, I think that's ridiculous. We can identify what the problems are with this team and so on and so forth, but I really think that's premature. And then even if you want to get practical about it, this is a project. You saw what happened with Leeds, where they got rid of Jesse Marsh right after they bought all those players. Now is not the time for me, in my opinion, but maybe you can clarify this for me, Alex, but I do think that he does deserve criticism for both the formation and for starting Douglas Costa over the weekend.
Yeah, 100%, Mike. I think there's definitely a lot to say in his tactical decisions this game. Definitely a little head scratching, at least in my part, from what I'm used to a Greg Vanny LA Galaxy team. I thought there were some substitutions that were a little strange. I thought maybe he should revert it to he should have started with the 3-5-2, to be honest. I don't know why he didn't keep that going. I know Riqui Puig is a player that you can't really replicate, but you can plug a player in there, Memo Rodriguez or Efrain Alvarez. We've said this before in the pod. But yes, the Vanny out crowd, I don't think is looking at this more in the emotional tensions running high kind of moment than kind of the hindsight that is you're gonna fire a coach. I don't think, even if Vanny does get fired, he's going to be with the organization, I believe. He's set up an infrastructure, a 5-year plan, with Chris Klein, with the top people at AAG, right, to establish the LA Galaxy some solid foundations. And let's be honest, the Galaxy haven't had a solid foundation in a long time since the Bruce Arena days. And I think, sure, Galaxy fans will want to be at the top now, and I understand the standard has been we want to be competing every single year. We want to be one of the best teams in the league. But at some point, you need to have a moment where you kind of slow things down and need to establish that foundation before you can be too ambitious and fall off the building. So I think that's kind of what Greg Vanny's doing with the team. We've seen a lot of some of the youth players kind of, come out through the system. Kind of we've seen it be more reinforced in the last couple of years. I think Vanny's really establishing a style of play, and obviously everybody knows they want to be a possession-based team, which is I think it's a good thing. It's just right now. The poor results are, you can say what it is, right? A whole factor of things. I feel like this Orlando game is more going to be an outlier by the end of the year. Obviously you don't have Riqui Puig, and Greg didn't make the right decisions in my opinion. But when you look through the rest of the year, you can't say the Galaxy haven't gone down with the fight. And I feel like this team, it's just a couple of games away from really clicking it. It could be just me being an optimist, but from what I've seen so far from this, Greg Vanny team, they're not horrible to watch. I mean, it's just right now a matter of kind of clicking at the start. It's kind of more of just being able to, not let these little errors cost you much. And we saw that a lot during the start of the year. I think about the Galaxy have kind of cleaned up in that department in some certain areas, defensively and offensively. But obviously, there's ways to go. Obviously, this team, is defensively, I think, still is trying to get a hold of itself. You're having Aude, Caligari, Neil, three young players right there. They're gonna have their ups and downs, and we all know that. But it's a solid foundation to have right now, and I think there's plenty of potential. And I still think this Galaxy team is, in contention for a playoff spot. I mean, let's be honest. The fact that there's 9 playoff teams now makes it so much easier, and I think alleviates some of the pressure for Greg Vanny, because as long as you're in there, and obviously there's going to be a little bit of a play-in round, as long as you're in there and you're competing, I think the Galaxy have a chance against any team on any given day. Again, this is a team that will elevate to the level of the opponents that they play to, and in the playoffs, I think they'll give any team in the Western Conference a good fight. I believe they can cause upsets. It might be premature, and it might be me just kind of rambling off, but I mean, in my opinion, I think this is a team that is an emotional team that plays up to par of the best teams, and right now just kind of needs to be in control and needs to be led in the right direction to kind of learn from these mistakes, not repeat it, and be able to have these moments that don't define whether the game they leave a game with 0 points, 1 point, but they leave with all 3.
Yeah, Vanny getting it wrong for one game doesn't mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, and what I like is when coaches try things. And we've been very complimentary, and we've been harsh when we need to. I myself made the argument that the game against Austin was the first real opportunity to play a 3-5-2 from the get-go. It was successful, which is what makes it all the more frustrating that the next game, when you sub out 2 of your players at the half and switch shape, it means you got it wrong. And Vanny got it wrong. And you saw what happened in the second half. Let me go ahead and look it up. I believe it was, where did it go?
Well, yeah, but in the meantime, while you're looking at that, I mean, Greg after the game said that, look, he really liked this 3-5-2, and that's kind of one of the positives he took away from this game. And, I feel like Greg's kind of seen enough of the 3-5-2 to be like, hey, let's start from the get-go. Let's make this our primary tactical setup, our primary formation. And I think
I hate to interrupt you, but they in the second half, the Galaxy won possession, and they also had 88 passes in the final third compared to Orlando City's 27. It clearly worked in the second half.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Greg kind of knows that now. Obviously, you might be like, whoa, finally took you a while to see it. I mean, I've been preaching for the 3-5-2 for a while. But I mean, as long as we see that there's progress, and we've got this season a big enough sample size to see that this can work. I mean, go with it. I'm fully expecting a 3-5-2 this weekend against Colorado. I would be extremely surprised if Greg Vanny, goes back to just one striker. I'd be surprised if he tries the 4-4-2 again. But I think, Greg's a smart manager. He's won an MLS Cup. He's coached some great players. I think Greg is going to figure this out, and he's going to execute with that 3-5-2 next game.
And despite all the negativity, they had chances, and as Fanny correctly pointed out, I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit because we talk about subscribing to the striker a lot. And I'll tell you, on El Trafico Radio, I called it to a T. I said that despite the fact that they had Robin Jensen and Antonio Carlos in the back, two huge dudes, that they, for some reason, whatever reason, they struggle vertically when it comes to, excuse me, they struggle aerially when it comes to balls. And those are the two Galaxy's biggest chances. There was the Joveljic header, which was ruled offside because of, I believe it was off by Chicharito's bum, whatever we want to call that.
It was
But
close.
and then he had that, and then Javi had that great attempt late that was saved brilliantly by Galese. So they could have gotten something out of it despite all this. It's just, again, I guess we're getting a little frustrated, a little pent up, and just, yeah, we want to see that 3-5-2. It's effective, it works, and puts the players in their best shape. Speak of putting players in their best shape, I suppose we should get to the post-game presser. That was pretty interesting. Vanny more or less just spoke about, the basics of sort of what we already talked about. But, we got to Chicharito, and Alex, he had some interesting words to say. I mean, you were the one who asked him the question about team morale, and his response was kind of telling.
Yeah, I think the reason I asked him that is because look, we said all year long like this team is playing good soccer, and they're having moments where they can just get into games, against Seattle, against LAFC, right? Austin, Vancouver, all these games that they've played, they've been close. They've given a fair fight, and these players are putting everything they can do to be able to go out there and get these 3 points. But at some point, it's got to take a mental tax on you. Like, let's be honest. If you're so close to building this tower and it falls down, it's going to get you angry. It's going to make you demoralized. It's going to bring the morale of the people you're working with down. So, Chicharito, who's a big guy on mental health, right? We've seen him advocate for getting help for mental health, wanting to be better in the mental side of things. I asked him, like, as captain of the club, you're a guy who's been here for a while. People respect you. You're a big figure for this team, for this league as well. How do you kind of motivate these guys? And I think his response was so interesting. Kind of talked about like, look, I try to be an example every single day. He goes out to run. He goes out to sprint. I think he brought up. I think he said today, right? He tries to, go up and sprint and make these runs, be energetic, and try to make that infectious. Kind of brought something up about the team saying, look, this team pays you well. You're getting your paychecks on time. You're playing for a club like the stature of the LA Galaxy. If that doesn't motivate you, nothing will. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to say because again, he didn't have to say that. This comes their I know he very much likes to be careful with his words, but he didn't have to say that. And I thought it was so interesting to kind of say that. Not that, and he made it clear he wasn't, pointing fingers at anybody. Kind of wanted to say, like, look, to your question, they should be motivated. But the fact that he had to bring that up was definitely interesting.
Yeah, he's very good at parsing his words and being very professional. But he was talking about Costa. I mean, who would you think of when you think of the Galaxy? Here, I have the quote right here. Let me go ahead and say it. I always said if you're not motivated enough to be playing for the most successful organization, living in one of the best cities in the world for the LA Galaxy, and then having your paycheck every 15 days on time, and then I don't think the salaries are pretty bad in the organization, man. What else do you need to get motivated, man? What else? I mean, I don't get it. I didn't want to slip into the Cheech accent, so I had to. I don't want to get in trouble, but yeah. I mean, Chicharito, I was thinking about this, and it's a bit of a tangent, but Greg, his thing recently, going all the way back to the handball incident, has been sort of the siege mentality, this us versus the world mentality, right? But to do that, you need soldiers, you need loyal soldiers, you need people who are going to watch your back. Javi is a guy for me who's a soldier. He's a guy who, if you put him in the right situation, he'll thrive. I mean, he's not giving up. His body language at times shows frustration, but it's the good frustration. It's the competitive frustration. Even at his worst, when you just saw him just gesticulating at Kevin Kerbal last year, that like that was at the very worst. It was coming from a competitive standpoint, and Jalen Neal, that's a soldier. That's I mean, talk about composure, talk about poise, talk about courage, talk about never letting down. And, Jalen Hill's 20 years old, and this dude's more of a man than Douglas Costa, at least from I can see, in terms of maturity, in terms of effort, in terms of like, you know, situations like this that show your character. And we've said it before. There's been characters in MLS, players who have been, very petulant and very, they're just there's just even been thugs. There's been all sorts of characters, but if they have that competitiveness, if they care, then that makes all the difference in the world. And it goes back to Costa, where there's Javi being a good teammate, trying to say it without saying it, and then you have Costa, and it's just, man, it's frustrating.
Yeah, all I'll say is if I'm in the locker room and I hear him say that, that's definitely a call for somebody. And I think, I'm not going to say who it's for. That's not going to be me. I think, he made it very clear. He kind of just wanted to bring that up as an example. Um, but, again, he didn't have to say that. He's very careful with his words. Definitely interesting that he noted that on when I asked my question. So I think that kind of tells you a little bit of maybe the mentality of some people. Again, I don't know, but it's just interesting that he had to bring this up because he's not the person to kind of point fingers at somebody or kind of say things like that. We've known that. Like me and Mike have been to so many of his pressers, and he's not like that. He likes to be, a us kind of guy, So the fact that he kind of said something like this, I was like, okay, it's caught me a little off guard.
Well, Mark Delgado in the he was last to talk, and he actually only had one question, but it was about him being on a championship team, and what the team needs to sort of get out of this. He's bright. Of course, the first thing he mentioned is you can't overlook any team in this league. But then he spoke about how Vanny has a game plan and how the team needs to stick to the game plan. You know, this team is in good spirits, but Alex, I'll put it to you. What do you think this locker room is like right now? Do you think that it's bad, good, chaotic?
I think there's a lot of confusion, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. I think it's confused. We've seen, like we said so many times again and again. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this team's playing good. They're not winning. These little things are costing them. They're doing good things on the possession end of things. They're doing their best to kind of, I think in the last couple of weeks defensively they've improved in transition. Um, but it's just so confusing to see that you're getting healthy, you're getting players back. You get those two red cards, right? Now you're kind of back to where you started. You play your hearts out against LAFC, but not enough to get a point at all. You get your first win against Austin. You're like, okay, things are turning around. We've got everybody back. We're playing well, and then now this. So I think it's just a lot of confusion, a bit of frustration, and again, that's kind of why I asked you, Chicharito, the question: How are you leading this team? Because I know if I was in that locker room, but I was a player, I would be mentally exhausted just of what the results have been in the last couple of days and knowing the effort that I put in.
Yeah, I would need a few days to walk away and just maybe go to Super Mario World or whatever that be. Is it Super Mario or Super Nintendo World?
Nintendo
I don't
World,
know.
even though it's purely Mario. I don't know.
Hey, maybe they'll make expansions later. I really want to
I
go
hope
to
so.
that. But yeah, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves with the game on with Colorado, but the Galaxy, they do have 3 of their next 5 at home, including a home match versus Seattle in the Open Cup. So that's technically 4 out of 5 at home. Now's the time for them to make a run, get some points, get a little bit of confidence, get a little bit of you
You
know.
get
Uh,
ACB back, so I guess that's a positive.
oh yeah, about that. Yes, we were actually quite positive last week because of word that midweek we found out that the Angel Sea Brigade had decided that they would be going back to the stands. Originally, that was great news, but then we want to be careful about diving into the deep end of the pool when it comes to like the supporters and everything that's going on. We don't speak for the supporters, and honestly, we'd prefer not to even have an opinion because I mean, we just want to be as neutral as possible because that's how you be fair to everybody. On Reddit, something came out today that doesn't really help the situation. There's a thread, it's got over 100 comments. Some people are alleging, based off of screenshots, that the ACB. See, I barely even want to talk about it. But the long story short is that they had done something with I don't know, something about getting a supporter, someone working for the club fired. And, rather than maybe talk about that situation and analyze it, I
I will say,
just,
do not believe Reddit. They said Will Levis would go #1 in the NFL draft. He did not. He was one of
oh,
those guys that's in the green room who's just looking sad and depressed. It was funny, I will say that, but do not believe Reddit. That is one of my life rules.
good point, dude. Alex, always the wise one. Man, and he's half my age. He's wiser than me. How's that? What's with 19, 20-year-olds being smarter than the older dudes? That's a theme lately, I suppose. But all right, let's see here.
I'm
Yeah,
like the Jalen Neal of reporters, I guess.
right. But yeah, this whole thing's just making me just incredibly sad. I mean, not just that, but just man, we were talking about earlier. We want the fun to return to the stadium, and until this boycott's over, every single time we go on here, we got to talk about it, and it's just bringing us down, and it's bringing the team down. And Alex is just sitting there. I look at him; he's not happy either. It is just sucks.
I'm just gonna not talk about this until like Saturday happens. If there's people in there, cool, we'll talk about the stadium atmosphere, whatever. But I think we'll just leave it at, from what we know, ACBS made a statement that they're gonna come back. We'll see on Saturday, Star Wars night, right? My favorite night of the year, personally. So we'll see what happens. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
I
talk
can't-
about boycott anymore. I'm not that I'm tired of it, but I mean everybody knows what's going on at this point. We'll just see what development happens on Saturday. If it does happen, if it doesn't, I think it will
Ale-
happen. We'll see.
Alex nailed it. We need to get back to the important issues, like Kevin Cabral coming back to the stadium on Saturday.
The Dejan Joveljic bobblehead. That's what really matters.
The odds of Kevin Cabral, I'm going to check Vegas, are about 90% right now. So we'll see.
I mean,
what
he has as
happens.
many goals this year as he did last year for his club, so that's something.
Oh man. Well,
We'll save
Alex,
that
it's
for
7
Thursday. We'll
o'clock.
save that for Thursday.
That means I'm getting out of here, and I gotta go work out or do something. So I guess we'll be taking off. Like always, my name is Mike Gray. I am the columnist who covers both the Galaxy and LFC for the Striker. Alex covers the LA Galaxy for the Striker as our beat writer. I finally got that one right. I've always struggled with it. Good night, everybody.